One thing that I want to start talking about, right, is anime and having like a supernatural worldview, right, and tying these things into certain like biblical spiritual beliefs. And I'm gonna be honest with you, listen, if you don't believe in this stuff, I can't prove this stuff 100% with facts, right? So treat it like mythology. But if it's something that you believe in, then you can have a fun time just listening along and maybe doing some research and just having fun studying mythology, right? So let's say it's Naruto, right? Let's talk about anime and other aspects of pop culture and fantasy world and tie it into like what I call biblical ancient alien theory, or, you know, Enochian mythology, right? So let's say we're talking about Naruto, right? And one thing I loved about Naruto was that the further that the show got along, the more they went into the history, right? The further the show got along, the further they went into the history. One thing that you'll notice about the end of Naruto Shippuden is that in the end of Naruto Shippuden, Kaguya popped up. Then the world tree came in, the world fruit came up. And along with the world tree and the world fruit, we also had Kaguya and the Osutsukis, who were aliens who came to Earth. And to me, looking at it from an Enochian perspective, the aliens would be like the Watchers, right? Because I believe aliens are angels, right? Aliens, angels are one and the same. It's like to a primitive people, and now maybe primitive is not the best word, but to a younger race of human beings who don't have all these terms and phrases that we have now, I could very well see them viewing an interdimensional or interstellar being as, or an extraterrestrial being as an angel. Because like, let's say that in the grand scheme of the universe, let's say God created the universe, who's to say that God only created humans? And let's say that, you know, the aliens or the angels may have different doctrines that they preach and different stories that they tell, but let's say that they could kind of be grouped into a few different categories, right? So in grouping them in a few different categories, how I would look at it is kind of like this, right? Let's say we have the angels who are on God's side. Cool. Then we'll have the angels who were fallen, the 1/3 that fell with Lucifer. Then me personally, I would separate the 200 watchers of the book of Enoch from the fallen. And why would I separate them from the fallen? I would separate the fallen angels from the book of Enoch watchers, because one, I believe that the 1/3 that fell was way before, I believe that happened way before the watchers that came. And I believe that the watchers were not originally fallen angels. I believe that they were angels who came here on a good to neutral term, sent here to watch over humanity and teach the ways of God, or whatever it is. And then they made a choice of their own to leave their habitation, and then they got thrown into Tartarus because of what they did, right? They got thrown into Tartarus because of what they did. Another reason why I would separate the watchers from the fallen angels is because the total number of angels referenced in the Bible is an exorbitant amount, and 200 doesn't seem like enough to be 1/3 of all the angels in the Bible. I remember there was a scripture where Jesus was talking about calling several legions of angels to come to his side if he wanted to. If there's several legions, then 200 can't be 1/3 of all the angels that were there, right? So let's move on from there and get back into the Naruto, right? So let's say that in Naruto, the Otsutsukis were the Watchers. The Watchers came to Earth. Now, where it's a little bit different is that Kaguya was the watcher who came to Earth, right? So Kaguya came and she made it with humans, right? Creating the first generation of Nephilim, right? And that would be the Otsusukis, right? So you'd have, old man, the Sage of Six Paths, and then you have his brother, right? And then beyond that, one of them went up to, his brother went up to the moon, which is back into space, and then he stayed on Earth, and then he, started a family, had his two sons, Ashura and Indra. But one thing that we'll notice out of this is that first it started off with the alien or the angel, and then it went from the alien or angel and things went lower into the creation of demons, right? Let's see, Otsutsuki Kaguya, she ate the chakra fruit, which you could say is like the fruit of good and evil, the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, right? And she received power, and she received a third eye, right? That eye on top of her head, the Rene Sharingan, right? And with the Rene Sharingan, it reminds me just like the knowledge of good and evil, having your mind expanded, opened up, or really like the activation of the pineal gland, which some people say gives them the ability to tap into supernatural powers and entities. Then through her being sealed and her chakra being sealed, created the 9 different demons, right? The 9 different demons that created, that were spread apart from the 10 tails, right? Now, what's interesting about this to me is that when we look at the concept of demon, like in the Bible, let's say that a demon would be what people now would consider ghosts. But the reason why is because they was wiped out due to the flood, right? So let's say there's demons wiped out due to the flood, and or the Nephilim, the children of the offspring of the Watchers. They're wiped out in the flood. Their souls stayed here, so therefore it was a demonic spirit that may influence or possess an individual. So when we look at Naruto is filled with the Kurama, or the 9-tailed fox demon, right? Now, one thing that we'll often notice about anime in general is that the growth that usually takes place goes through a process. And the process of growth that an individual typically goes through when it comes to anime protagonists is they will have a demon or some type of demonic entity that's inside of them. And that demonic entity that is inside of them, or another personality that they have, is something that when they lose control, it gives them extra power. Then eventually they learn to use that power. Then they learn to integrate that power. And then after that, they typically may lose that power and then have to learn how to grow in their own strength. Or they are some type of hybrid. And then from that hybrid place, they have to ascend being a hybrid. Or maybe they may realize that they were really that the entire time. But that's because gods and demons are seen a little bit different in Asian culture. But I don't believe that it is completely separate from some of what we talk about with the Enochian biblical narrative, right? When it comes to like a supernatural worldview, or how things used to be in the past. Like some days of Noah type shit, right? Now, let's say that it goes from the alien, came to Earth, right? And then it taught different things to humans. So let's say it's Hashirama. Hashirama taught, was it Ninshu or whatever, ninjutsu? Not ninjutsu, but it was chakra, or a predecessor to chakra. Like, it's what he had, and then he shared it with others. So there was this angel among the Watchers called Armoros, right? Armoros taught enchantment, right? And then you had Azazel, which is the one who taught fighting. So the one who taught weapons and warcraft was Azazel. So it's like basically what they ended up learning over time in Naruto was the use of fighting skills and the use of enchantment through different forms of manipulating the earth, manipulating what was around them, manipulating chakra to affect the earth. And I think it's a very interesting concept because when it comes to human beings, there is a certain effect that our energy, our vibrations do have on the outcomes around us. Maybe not everybody is as tapped into it as others, but I still believe that to a certain extent it is a thing. And, not something I can prove with 100% fact, but I say that it's a pretty interesting thing to think about when you think about individuals with superpowers. Right? So when we're looking at this story of Hashirama and Ashura and Indra and how all these different things took place, there were these different motivations that took place. But I love looking at the fact that, let's say there's Armoros and there's Azazel teaching enchantment and teaching warcraft. And then we have the aliens leading down into the demons, right? Now, there's not so much of a factor of giants, like as far as Nephilim, like giants in Naruto, but there are the mighty men of renown, and that would be like Hashirama and his descendants. These were men who had supernatural gifts and abilities, men and women, right? So to me, just looking at all this different stuff, they would use seals and all these different things to bind the demons and to put the demons into people. I think a very common trope or thing that takes place in anime is the subjugation of demons to use their strength or power for oneself, or to give one a certain level of strength. So, that would be like Kurama being sealed into Naruto, right? Like the One Tails being sealed into Gaara, the Eight Tails being sealed into B. So there's all these different aspects that I think are very interesting. And that kind of reminds me of like, the Wisdom of Solomon, and all the stories of Solomon using a ring, or, talking to the demons and then using them to build the temple, using them to do certain things around Israel. And I just think it's an interesting topic. If y'all want to hear some more, there's some more shows you want me to try to explain through an Enochian mythology lens, then just let me know. This is Coach Brody. I'm out.